I'm Lauren Kling, and this is 5 Things That Changed Your Life. Each episode, I sit down with a special guest and ask them to share 5 stories, events, or experiences that had an impact on their life, like a person who helped them decide a path to take, or a place that completely transformed the way they think. Perhaps it was inspiration from a family road trip or a childhood TV show that helped them to make the person they are today. This week's guest, Tiwana Floyd.
I guess she saw that I was about to cry, and she said, "There's no need for you to cry." She said, "Listen, adults mean well. People will say things and they mean well, but a lot of times they don't really do what they say. The best thing for you to do is to just rely on yourself so that you're not disappointed by other people." And I ran with that until I became so independent where I didn't ask anybody for help. And I'm like, oh, I got to make an adjustment to this. Right. It's like, no, you have to discern who you're dealing with and then decide whether or not you're going to take that person's word or what have you. That was something that I found out later on, probably in my 30s, I think. That was 17 when she told me that.
Tiwana is a Los Angeles-based commercial and television actor. A graduate of the Second City Hollywood and soon-to-be graduate of the Second City Directing Program, Tiwana makes her directorial debut with 4 shows in November of 2016. Tiwana is also the owner of YourVisualAid.com, a design firm focused on print media for actors and entertainers. Hey everybody, this is Lauren Kling. Welcome to 5 Things That Changed Your Life. As always, I am joined by my producer, Alan Ng. How's it going, Alan?
Oh, it's going really good.
So, episode number 10.
Yes, Tiwana Floyd. This is another one of your friends. This is kind of interesting because, I travel all the way in from Orange County to come and record these things with you, and they're mostly your friends, and then I just get to kind of sit along and then make a new friend myself.
I mean, it's funny you say that, but in a way it is. It's there with anybody you run into, there's always an awkward, if there's no reason to say hi to somebody or smile at somebody beyond that, it's a commitment to actually talk to a stranger when there's nobody else around who can make the introduction.
Yeah, and I don't normally go to parties and just ask random people, what are 5 things that have changed your life?
You could try that. We could invite our audience to try that.
How do you know Tiwana?
So Tiwana and I are in a mastermind group of actors and entertainers here in Los Angeles. And a mastermind group is just a way for people who are all on a similar path to meet up, in our case, once a month. We meet up and we share our victories and we cry over our defeats and we build each other up. And it sounds a little goofy, but when you've got a room full of 25 or 30 people who month after month and year after year are making progress on their own, it sure brings you up too. And there's that saying that you are the average of the 5 people you hang out the most. I am part cat because I hang out with my cats a lot. But being amongst this group of actors in this mastermind group has certainly given me a mental boost, if you will.
Yes, and encouragement along the journey.
Yes. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah, me too. What were her 5 things?
So, Tiwana's 5 things are, number 1, joining the Agape International Choir. It's where Tiwana found her voice and challenged herself to use it powerfully. Number 2, getting fired from a job she no longer enjoyed. And that really hit home for you and I as well. And we discuss our similar circumstances to leaving jobs we hated. Number 3, recognizing how people view her. How people have a perception of Tiwana, and usually a perception of that is grander than who she really is. Number 4, Second City, learning how to improvise taught Tiwana a higher standard of listening and how to respond truthfully. And, of course, how to say yes and, even when it scares you. And number 5, Tiwana's adage, rely on myself and I'll never be disappointed. So those are the 5 things that changed Tiwana's life. Here we go with the conversation with Tiwana Floyd. Hey, everybody, it's Lauren. Just jumping in real quick to let you know we're trying something new for this episode. When you hear this chime, that means that we're moving on to a new thing or a new topic. So let us know what you think. Give us a shout out on Facebook at facebook.com/5thingspodcast or on Twitter at 5thingspod. Back to the show. Welcome.
Thank
You
you.
look lovely, by the way.
Thank you. I'm coming from singing. Oprah was at Agape today.
Oh.
Yep. Yeah.
We were just talking about how we were going to get Oprah on my podcast.
Look, you're
Just like, should we just put the ask out there?
Probably. I think the interview or the invite had been out for her to come to Agape for maybe about 5 or 6 years. So she just made it. So
Wow.
if you put it
Explain
out now.
Agape for people who don't know.
Oh
what
yeah,
it is.
Agape is a it's a spiritual center. Some people call it a church, but it really is a spiritual center, and it's non-denominational, and pretty much any faith, whatever your belief is, you can go there and not feel like you're being alienated or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I sing in a choir, so I'm there a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And where is it? It's in Culver City.
it's in Culver City. Mm-hmm.
Right. And so that's one of the things on your list actually is joining the
joining
Agape
the
International Choir. It's where I'm finding my voice
Yeah.
and challenging myself to use it powerfully.
Yeah, so I've been going. Well, let me take it back a little bit.
Okay.
I was doing this program, with Dallas Travers. I was reading her book, The Tao of Show Business, and she has this little, a life wheel where it's like you try to figure out where you are in these different segments of your life. And one of them is like fitness, one of them was spirituality. And I ranked it at maybe about a 6 or a 7. Mm-hmm. And so the next phase is like, okay, if you could take it to the next level, just one rung, what can you do? And I was like, I could just go there every Sunday. So that was back in 2011, and I just started going every Sunday at 8:30 before I would go to work. And then after a while, I was like, I kind of want to join the choir, but I was very intimidated by it. But what I liked about the choir is that it always felt like they were just expressing so much joy. Mm-hmm. And I remember them saying that if you wanted to join, you had to have 6 months of service within the choir. Not within the choir, within Agape somewhere.
Right.
And they only have it once a year, the auditions. So a friend of mine who's been going to Agape probably for 12 years or so, she was like the manager of the guest relations, which when people come for the first time, then there's like this team that welcomes people, kind of shows them where to go, gives them a little badge and a little card or what have you. So she called me up out of the blue and said, hey, would you like to join my team? I'm down a few people. And the first thing I thought of, I was like, oh yeah, if I join a team, then I'll have 6 months of service. And I was
Right.
like, oh, is that selfish of me? And she was like, well, it's selfish of me because I'm asking people that I like to be a part of my team. So that's how I got into doing service. And then when the auditions came up, I was 1 month shy, and you have to sing in front of the entire choir. And I just found out that there are active maybe about 200 choir members, but inactive, there's over 400.
Wow.
Yeah, so I had to audition in front of all of these people. I was a nervous wreck, but I know the song because it's something that they sing all the time. And I sang the song. I messed up the words, even though I had the paper in my hand. And Ricky Byers-Beckwith, who's the director of the choir, she's like, she should be a comedian because she's naturally funny.
Right.
And she was like, okay, well, first of all, you have to know the words. And I'm like, I'm nervous, whatever, So, but I made it past it, and my whole purpose to get in the choir is just to be a part of the joy that I've witnessed, from the seats. And somehow, well, I guess from my auditions, you could probably hear that I could sing. Mm-hmm. And at some point gave me a quick solo, which I was scared to death to do. I didn't really sleep the night before. And on Sundays, we used to have 3 services, 6, 8, and 11.
Wow.
So to be nervous for all of those services, and I was the person that's closing this song out, and it really helped me to realize that I was more talented in my voice than I'd been giving myself credit for. But it was also an out-of-body experience. But then my knees would be knocking because I'd be so nervous afterwards. I'd just be shaking trying to get back to my seat. So I've gotten better over the years. But and this was right in alignment with when I started doing improv. So I was saying yes and that to that. And then the choir also had me saying yes and. So then now I'm doing this thing where I am a singer.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right. And you had mentioned, because you and I are both in a mastermind group for actors, you had shared the story about being on The Voice. Would you mind sharing that?
Oh, my goodness. That was an amazing experience. I think it's probably the most epic performance experience that I've had. Let's see. I got an email from this woman who used to be a choir director, an assistant choir director for the choir, but she left because she tours doing like the Supremes and things like that. So she sends me an email and she said, would you be interested in being a part of this gospel group that I'm putting together? I didn't know what it was, but just based on who she is, I'd say yes, because her work ethic, like she's like a high bar of excellence for me.
Right.
She's somebody that I watch in terms of singing and musicality, and she's very talented. She plays piano and what have you. So I said yes to it, and then found out that it was The Voice. So I was really excited about that because I just thought it was just like some gig we're going to maybe sing at some other church or something.
Right.
But it was The Voice. So then I was like, wait, isn't that union? Wait, that means there's pay. NBC. So I go and I look it up and I see that it is in fact union. I'm looking at the rates, and we had to, let's see. Well, okay, so they got the whole group of people together. So there were maybe about 10 or 15 people from Agape. The show had another 8 people, and there was another choir director from Agape that's now in New York, and he brought some people from New York with him. So I think it was maybe about 30 people altogether. Mm-hmm. And we had to get together on a Friday night and rehearse it. And then Saturday morning, we were going to NBC to do it in front of the actual producer, the musical producer or director of the show.
Right.
And, I don't read music, but, if I just listen to it over and over again, I can get it. So it's just one of those things. But then the next morning, they sent buses for us. And as we're about to leave, they're like, the guy goes, so at 2 a.m., some new lyrics came in and there's a change in it. And he's like, don't panic. I'm going to get all of my sight readers into one van, and we're going to get it. And then when we get there, you guys just kind of fall in, so it looks like we know what we're doing. So if they ask if anybody reads music, what do we say? Everybody says yes. But I don't think it was really that much of a big deal. And we got there and we sang it, and then we had to come back that Monday, and then we were performing it. And it was for Jordan Smith for the semifinals. And I hadn't watched The Voice since the first season. I just watched too many things. I had to take it out of the rotation. Right. But he won. So he's like America's favorite right now.
Yeah.
So,
he had actually, after he won, spoke at our church.
Oh, okay.
And then they played it. And I'll tell you, that was a very powerful performance.
Yeah, to sing Queen. Somebody to Love Me. Mm-hmm. Yeah, when I found out that it was Queen, just that alone, I was really excited.
Right.
But it was really profound.
So a thing that stuck in my mind is you had mentioned, but didn't dwell on the fact that it was union and that you were going to get paid.
Right.
But in my mind, that's legitimate. That somebody is paying you for something you already love to do.
Exactly.
But I'm assuming that was kind of the feeling you were feeling.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I would have done it anyway, because there's a lot of things that we do in the choir that it's just kind of like tithing, if you will. You just give your time and you show up and you sing songs and make people feel good. But this one just happened to have a nice big check attached to it, and it was something where we got to feel good. By the time we took the stage, when the entire audience was packed, and to watch the judges watch his sizzle reel, I almost started crying as I was standing there because it was so electrifying. Right. But I had to pull it together. It's like, not Tiwana, you got it. This is for Jordan. This is not about you breaking down right now, And pulled it together, and yeah, it was just amazing. So we had a great time.
What an experience.
I cried afterwards, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll bet you did.
I wasn't the only one.
Let's switch gears.
Okay.
Another thing that means something to me as well. Mm-hmm. You said getting fired from a job I no longer enjoyed. Yeah. It was the impetus that led me to be an actor and leave New York City to come to LA. Yeah. I'd love to hear your story.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. So I was working... I'll just start where I got fired from. I was working at Bergdorf Goodman in New York City, which is a high-end, high-luxury retail store.
Right.
I was working 4 days a week, making probably $90,000 a year just for selling things. At that time, it started off cosmetics, and then it went into eyewear because the cosmetic line that I was with was... based in London, it wasn't doing well in America, so they pulled it, and I got pushed into optical, which is really a good place to land. And Yeah, the money was really good, but then it got to a point where I was just like not really producing. And there's tactics in place that you can always make money, but I was just pretty much just showing up, and just if somebody was looking for help, then I just ring them up. I
Right.
really lost. I just wasn't into it anymore.
There's no passion to do.
I had no passion to do it. I liked being in Manhattan. I was living in the Bronx at the time. I liked being in Manhattan and the fashion of it. And the thing is that Bergdorf Goodman has an employee cafeteria up top on the 8th floor, I believe. And it's like really good food. And so it's like you sell a couple of $1,000 and then you take a 15-minute break and then you come back and you sell more and then you go upstairs and have breakfast. So it was like, that was just like the culture, because
Right.
you're pretty much your own boss when you're there. So, yeah, it got to a point where I want to say out of the blue, but I know it was because I wasn't really making the sales that I used to. And I got pulled into the office, and it's like, okay, you haven't made your sales quota for this month. If you do that consecutively for 3 months, then you get terminated. But everybody knew this.
Right.
So then I would straighten up my act and get back out on the sales floor, and I'd be okay. And then it's like, okay, great. Then 2 months later, back again. It's like, all right. It doesn't have to be 3 times. Like if you do this another time, the third time, you're out. So I straighten up my act, get back out there, sell a bunch of stuff. And then I thought I was doing really good. But apparently the way that they measure your goals against other people's goals, but you don't really know what the number is. It's like
Right.
some arbitrary number that you have no idea what it is. So it was really after a while, after the fact, I realized, how would I have known what to make? But I wasn't really selling anyway.
Yeah.
So I found out that when you got fired for productivity, well, let me backtrack. I had decided that I was going to quit. And what I did was I paid off all my credit card bills. And I think I still had a lease, a rental. I had a lease on my car, and then that was up. So at this point, I had no debt, and I'm making all this money. So I was putting $400 away a week.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, this is great. This money's adding up. I don't know what I was doing with the money before that, but probably on shoes and bags. But at this point, I'm just putting money away, and I'm watching it grow so fast. I'm like, you know what? Maybe I'll just stay here. I'll just wait until they let me go. And it was like I reneged with the universe, and it's like, no, that's not the plan that we had. You said that you were going to quit. And then I got the news that you didn't make your goal again. And I remember my manager feeling so disappointed and afraid for me, and I was okay. So we go upstairs, I clean out my locker. The human resources was in a different building. So we walked over, and I sit down with the HR woman. This was the same woman that I had pretty much gotten hired with 4 years ago. And she was giving me kid gloves and just being tender with me. And I was fine with it because I knew I can collect unemployment. And she was like, are you okay? And I said, yeah, why? She's like, this is the easiest termination I've ever dealt with. And I said, I can collect unemployment, right? And she said, yeah. I was like, oh, yeah, I'm fine.
That happened to me with my job.
Yeah?
And it was both the worst day of my life and probably one of the best days of my life. Just the kick to say, you didn't want to do this job anyways.
No, yeah.
Go out and do what you need to do.
Yeah.
And I had a job that I wasn't liking. I had a manager that didn't respect
Yeah, that sucks.
me at all. And it got to a point where in one argument he said to me, I will tell you what you can learn, Lauren, and when you can learn it.
Oh, wow.
And that was my get busy living or get busy dying moment. But from there, that was in like October
Okay.
of 2010.
Okay.
So you and I are both
Relatively
in this
recent.
mastermind group led by Christine Aller, who's
Yes.
an LA-based, what would you call it, career guidance
Yeah,
for
I would call- yeah.
entertainers and actors. And so I said, what do I do? And she says, we're going to get you the hell out of there.
Yeah.
And so what was amazing was she says, for the next 3 months, you get to be you again.
Yeah.
You are going to take sick days off. You don't have to worry why or when or give them any excuse. You just say, I'm taking the day off.
Yeah.
Because worst comes to worst, in the end of 3 months, you're going to get fired or
Yep.
you're going to quit.
Yep.
And that's a weird feeling when you give yourself the power at a job you know you're going to leave.
Exactly. Yeah. And, when you're speaking about that as well, because once I got in the final word that, Tiwana, you didn't make your numbers, this means that you'll be terminated on this date. why not now? Why? Why?
So keep coming back.
Yeah, exactly. So I took all of my sick time,
Right.
and they paid me out on a vacation, but the sick time you can't take that
Right.
money. So I took the sick time. So I filled out all the paperwork, and as we're walking back, me and the manager are walking back. She's walking back to the building. I'm walking to the train now, and she's like, "Well, what are you going to do now? Do you need help finding a job?" And I was like, "No, I'm going to start my acting career." And she laughed in my face, and she's like, "Good, yeah, okay, good luck with that. What else are you going to do?" And
wow.
Right. But I was so clear in that moment. I was already training in the Meisner program, and I was trying to go to auditions in between lunchtimes and all this. I was just tired of it. So that's why I was
Right.
going to quit in the first place. So, yeah. So when she said that to me, good luck with that, I was like, I guess what I'm saying is probably far-fetched for people who last year I would probably think it was far-fetched too. So, okay.
Right.
Yeah.
You totally caught me by surprise because I would assume that everybody's going to be understanding and like, well, good luck.
Not in New York.
Well,
Yeah.
not in LA, not in anywhere.
Right. That's true.
How many stories have we heard from people who
Yeah.
leave their small towns to come to
Oh,
LA?
yeah. Right.
And their parents aren't just like, good
Right.
luck, we believe in you.
Yeah.
It's like,
Exactly.
where the F are you going? And yeah. It's, so
Yeah,
I
I
get it.
remember that was it was like the first day of spring, and in New York, the first day of spring is like Exodus. It's like everybody wants to leave their job and be outside. And the next day, I got up, I went to Manhattan. As a matter of fact, I was living in Jersey City at this point. And I got up, I went to Manhattan, I went to Washington Square Park, and I was reading my Essence magazine, and I heard the birds chirping, like for the first time. It was like, oh my gosh.
There's a world out there.
Yeah. And then I called my friends at work and said, guess where I am? I'm just in the park doing nothing, reading a magazine. And of course they hated me. But that was the beginning of my independence and recognizing this is the perfect time. I've got 6 months of unemployment to figure it out. And at that point, let's see what came first. I put my cat to sleep, and then I got terminated, and then my 5-year relationship had ended. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go to LA. I've been wanting to go, but this is the time to do it. There's nothing holding me here. And I made a plan.
Boy, if the universe or God wasn't giving
Yeah.
you a signal.
Absolutely.
New life, baby.
Right. Yeah. It's like,
Right.
get out. Yeah.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Something else you said on here that Alan and I found interesting. You said recognizing how people view me. Mm-hmm. People have a perception of me, usually a perception that is grander than who I really am.
Yeah.
In regards to acting, I realized casting directors were expecting me to be great.
Mm-hmm.
And when I didn't meet that expectation, they'd be disappointed.
Yeah.
So now I meet the expectation.
Yeah. Let's see.
So are you saying you rise up to the expectation rather than allowing yourself to just be you?
No, I'm me. It's just that before I was kind of like skating along, kind of half-assing it, in that aspect. But I would say that whenever, let me see. I remember when my parents moved, we moved from New York to South Jersey, and it took me a long time to make friends. And when I finally made friends, everybody's like, "Oh, I thought you were really conceited. I thought that you were rich. I thought," like, they had all of these preconceived notions about me, and I was like, "You never spoke to me. How did you even think that?"
Right.
And then further down the line, I'm like, "Oh, it's the way I carry myself." As a matter of fact, one of my friends, we're friends now, and during high school. But she said to me, she's like, "You always walked upright and like with your head in the air." And I'm like, "Okay, I'm just have self-esteem, I guess. I don't know."
Yeah.
So that was like the beginning of it. But then as time moved on, when I would show up in certain places and people of power would treat me as if they weren't sure who I was. So it's like, is she part of this team or does she work for us? So I always felt that apprehension with people. I remember one time being on it was a non-union commercial. I was non-union at the time. And this, I don't know if they still do this, but this was during the time where non-union got like a box lunch, but then SAG people got hot food, for lunch.
Right.
So I just happened to be going in the wrong direction, and I walk up to the SAG lunch, and it was that moment of, oh, he's going to tell me to go the other way. And he was like, "SAG? Yeah, go that way." And I said, oh, okay. It's like he just assumed
Right.
that I was SAG for whatever reason. And I brought this up in Christine's in the Santa Monica group. So I was doing a workshop, and the casting director gave us all sides or what have you, and I wasn't good at cold reading at that time. So I'm like all nervous about trying to get it together, and then it was an emotional scene. It was a lot going on, and I get there, and she sits up, and it's like she's glowing. Like, what are you going to give me? Mm-hmm. And I do, and the room is full of people, and I do it, and I'm stammering, and I'm trying to find my place or whatever, and I couldn't get the emotion up, so I was frustrated. And so she calmed me down, and she's like, all right. She gave me an adjustment, and I still couldn't find it, and it was just this one moment where she just kind of dropped her shoulders. It was just like a slight hint of disappointment. And it was just like, okay, thank you. And it's like, oh no, I kind of let her down. So then fast forward, I was in another workshop. Again, room full of people, but this one was with prepared scenes, so I felt good about this. But I was like probably in the fourth row, and I just hate the part where everybody's talking. I just want to get to the point.
Right.
So I got my head down. I'm probably reading something, whatever. So now the casting director's going through pictures, and he's like, who's this person? Where are you? And he'll ask people questions. So I hear him say, Tiwana, who's Tiwana? And my head pops up, and he looks at my picture, and he looks at me, and he's like, how long have you been in LA? And at that time, it was like 5 or 6 years. He's like, why am I just now meeting you? And now the whole room is like, who is this chick? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. But I'm uncomfortable. But you haven't seen me read yet.
Right.
So you're just going based on you have a perception of you're expecting me to be good. Luckily, I was prepared for that. But he was very direct with me. He was like, that was great what you did, but I don't care about that scene. That's before I knew about how to choose scenes that are worthwhile or
Right.
interesting or what have you. So it was in that moment, and then looking back and retrospectively of all these moments where people have treated me a certain way. My best friend is a stand-up comic in New York, and when she first started out, I would go with her to every club because I
Right.
wanted to get in for free, and we did that probably for like 3 years. But people would remember me and didn't remember her. So if she was by herself, they would kind of remember her. But if I was with her, I'm like, oh, then they would put the two
Right.
together. And she was like, people always remember Tiwana. So it's just like all of these little elements. I'm like, oh, people have a perception about me that may not necessarily be true. But okay, if I stand in my greatness, then I give them what they're expecting.
But
Yeah.
it's still your greatness,
It's still
not their idea.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's still my own
You're
greatness.
not playing a role that they would.
No, not at all. I mean, I could be a con person.
Have you ever thought about what it was about you? I mean, that's a powerful thing to be able to have
Yeah.
carry yourself in a way where people perceive you
Yeah.
and remember you just by the way you look.
Yeah. I had this conversation. I used to be a part of a goddess group, and we would meet monthly, and then there would be like a topic of the month. And there was something about what would you tell this little, you bring a picture of yourself as a little girl, what would you tell this little girl? And I think I can't remember where it came from, but I remember saying that my mother had me because she had me young. She had me because she didn't feel like my grandmother loved her. Mm-hmm. My grandmother was old school. It's like I put food on a table, that's how I love you. But she didn't really show emotional,
Right.
Whatever. So when she became pregnant with me, she kept me because she was like, at least this way I know that I have somebody that'll love me back. So she showered me with so much love, not in a way that was just overbearing or overwhelming, but she was always there for me. So I think it gave me a lot of confidence where I didn't have to look for love in other places.
Right.
It's just like, I'm just confident because I know that somebody loves me, and that's how I walk through the world.
Yet you're humble. So
I know.
What do you think prevented you from going in that other direction where...
My grandmother. I would probably say my grandmother, because she and I, same sign, Gemini, and she's always been very humble. If I complain about the rain, nope, you don't get to complain because the rain is good. It nourishes the land. God gives us the rain. It's like I never got a chance to have be pissed about something because she'd say, nope, this is why it's great. But she was really humble. She would do a lot of things like in her church, and she would visit the sick and shut-in at her church, but never wanted to be acknowledged for it. So I spent a lot of time with her. So I probably picked up those traits from her and probably probably my mother, because my mother's, very low key and very giving, so I don't know.
Second City.
Yeah.
You say about Second City, learning how to improvise taught me a higher standard of listening.
Yeah.
To respond truthfully. To say yes and, even when it scares me.
Yeah.
Once I get off that back line, I don't know what will happen next, but I will either sink or swim.
Right.
Either way, I've made a bold move to jump in.
I took improv because I was taking this commercial class with the casting director, and he said somewhere in the class, sometimes he can't call people in if they don't have improv on their resume.
Right.
And I was like, what? I'm missing out on opportunities. And so he's like, yeah, just take a couple of classes somewhere at the big houses and, get that on your resume. At least we see that and we can bring you in.
Right.
So I signed up for Second City and did their Improv 1, very basic level. And it was terrifying. There was a bunch of people. Most of us were all new people. I don't think there was anybody in my group that had done improv before. But I remember this one teacher, Robin. Okay, so we'd be playing freeze tag, and freeze tag basically is everybody lines up on the back wall. Two people come out, they get a topic, and then they do this. They do a scene, and somebody on the back line has to clap and say freeze, and then you go and you assume whatever position that person's in, and then start a whole new scene. Yeah, I would probably almost never clap my hands, and then it was getting to the point where people would be out there doing 4-minute scenes because nobody's clapping.
Right.
Right. Even there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So this teacher, she stopped everything and she was like, "Guys, you just gotta clap your hands and just jump out there. Don't wait to try to know what you're gonna say. You're never gonna know what you're gonna say.
Right.
Just clap your hands, jump out there, and trust that something's gonna happen." And I was like, oh, I didn't think about it that way. I thought it had to be brilliant, but it's Improv 1, so why would I think that? And I still remember that. And then I just started clapping and jumping in, and I'd fall on my face or not. Most times I fell on my face, but then I felt good because I did it. So, so I wound up doing the entire, what do they call it, the conservatory, and graduated from Second City. And over the course of, I think it was about a year and a half, learning how to, because the main thing is that you have to pay attention to what people are saying in order to respond or react.
Right.
And whenever it's something that you're making up, nobody knows how to move the story forward because it's fake. I'm trying to fabricate something, but now I'm stammering because I can't figure it out, and then my partner's waiting, and then they jump in with something phony, and now we're both creating this phony world, and it's just a disaster. Yeah, so when I learned that, it's like, just take something and make it authentic. Take something from your life. I have this one teacher now, he's our coach. I have an improv team. And our coach, he was like, just take something from your life. If somebody says pink cup, then what can you think of in your life that has to do with a pink cup? I can't think of anything right now, but it's just trying to find something that stems from that to keep it authentic. And the humor comes from our true responses as opposed to trying to fabricate something.
Learn the same thing in voiceover is you want to be authentic. And so even if you can't identify with the product itself, think of something that you can identify with. Like they say if you're doing a hamburger spot, but you just ate. Well, think about those times when you've been starving for a hamburger or a hot dog or pizza or something. That emotion is authentic to you. Right. You're going to share that with whatever this product is.
Right. Yeah.
So, I think that's what people misunderstand about improv. You're not there to step on stage and say funny things.
Right.
You're there to be real, be authentic, and allow the comedy to come out of that.
Exactly. And what it also had me do is now I step into these scary things because even if I fall on my face, it's not death, So it's like I say yes to. It's kind of like, I know Shonda Rhimes has a book out right now called
Say Yes.
Yeah, Say Yes, right. And I'm like, oh, it's the same thing in improv. It's like you say yes to things. Oh, it's not one of my favorite movies, but a movie that I really like is with Jim Carrey. Yes Man?
Oh, yeah.
Yes
Yeah,
Man?
Yes Man.
Yeah, Yes Man. I love that film because it's the same concept. He was somebody that was just like no to everything. He denied everything. And then he had to spend, maybe a year or something just saying yes to things. And all of these wonderful opportunities came into his life just because he said yes. So that's what I do now. I say yes. But, I contemplate it first. It's like, well, let me think about it before let me check in. Am I saying no because I'm afraid of it? Oh, yeah, that's not a reason. So that's pretty much what improv has done for me. It's just opened up a whole nother community of people I call them misfits. It's like a bunch of us who don't really fit in with our family, or people have called me weird all my life. And now here I'm in a place where I'm not weird. I'm just with brothers and sisters who do. We're all
right,
silly.
All neurotic,
right?
All wanting to get
doing,
it out on stage.
Yeah.
Now you talk about the power. We talk about improv is yes and, but there's also the power of saying no in life.
Absolutely.
Curious how if you've experienced saying no to something. Rather than a lot of people, it's easy for us. We want to do everything because we think if we say no, people are never going to call on us again.
It used to be for me that if I said no, I was missing out on something. So, even if I think about back in my early 20s when I used to party a lot, and I was a dancer, so I didn't really drink. I would go out and I would dance all night long. And in New York, that's 4:00 in the morning. But anytime that somebody was going to a party, I'd say yes, and I'd get there, and I'm like, oh, you knew that you shouldn't have come tonight, and you came, and now this sucks, or whatever. And I wouldn't follow that or honor that instinctual thing. I don't know exactly when I started to exercise no, but I definitely do it now. And basically, it's like a couple of rules. It's like, does it excite me to do that? Do I have a lot on my plate? Who's the person that's going to be doing it? I don't know if I want to work with that person. So it's just like things that honor me and in the most selfish way. Does it excite me? Do I want to do this?
Right.
Yeah.
And there's a self-power in saying no.
Right.
It's not like it's the end of the world for that thing. And a gut feeling for me is a huge part of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And they say that honoring your word is either one, saying what you're going to say, doing what you say you're going to do. That's one. But then two, it's also the moment that you know that you don't want to do it or you can't do it is to tell that person. I think a lot of times, I know for me, it's like I would be, hating to tell the person, embarrassed or just too shy or whatever, didn't have the power to say, I don't want to do it anymore for fear of how they're going to think or whatever.
Right.
And then by the time I say no, now it's 3 weeks and their back is against the wall and now they're pissed because I could have told them 3 weeks ago as soon as I knew. So, yeah.
Yeah, I got it. Now, you're also in a director's program at Second City, right?
Yep. I started in January, and it goes through to October.
Wow. And what is it about this program?
So basically, at the Second City in the directing program, we learn how to direct Second City style sketches. So the way Chicago and probably Toronto used to be, I think there used to be Detroit and Las Vegas, but now it's Chicago and Toronto, but Chicago's the main hub. So we learn how, I think Second City's been around since 1959, I believe. And they have all of these touring shows from all of these archives, from shows from past many, many years.
Right.
And we learn how to direct that style of show. So we just had a show last week where there's 8 of us in the group. Each of us had to choose 2 sketches from the archives, which there's tons of, and then we held auditions. We shared a cast, and then each week we'd direct our cast on the sketches that we chose. And maybe it was about 8 or 9 weeks that we rehearsed, and then we just finally had the show last week. It was one night only, and it was great to watch it because there's moments when you're like, oh gosh, did I pick the wrong sketch? Am I articulating what I need to get done? It's just, I'm really understanding what it's like to be a director from the actor's perspective and from the director's perspective, what's needed, and making sure I'm giving my actors what they need so that they can execute,
Right.
Because basically what we're directing them on is it has to match the touring company, because it's almost as if we're doing this now, and if we were to send you out into the world to do this, it has to be the standard of the Second City.
What is something you would say, or common something you would have to tell them to make them match the tune.
Well, I had this one sketch. There's let's see, two people in it, and the woman is playing like a Snow White, and she's an eccentric, kind of like Baby Jane, just a little, like maybe she's having a lucid moment, but she probably has breakdowns because she lives in a cardboard box down by the ice skating rink, and ice skating has been her life until she got too old, and then she couldn't do it anymore. And so I had the two people up there. There's a guy and there's her, and I wasn't getting. It was like the first day, and I kept trying to give her stuff, and I'm like, that's not it, because I didn't show them the video. We can show them the video, but I chose not to because I felt like I need to learn how to do it without showing a video. But I was like, I just can't get it. So finally, I was like, can you sing it? And then she sang it, and then that little element of crazy came out, and then the whole room was like, it went from 0 to 60. So it's going to be a learning process. I'm still figuring it out.
Do you have aspirations to be a director, or? Well,
my big goal is I want to be an executive producer. I want to have my own production company and hire. I've got all of these great people that write and act and are funny and are great theatrically. So I want to have my own production company and bring in my friends to write, and then we crank out films, or I would say films. Yeah. You could have some YouTube content, but mostly films.
So I'm sure Shonda Rhimes has been a huge inspiration.
Yeah, she is. The one thing that I love about Shonda Rhimes is that she has diversity in all of her shows. So it's kind of like a slice of life. Like if you walk out into America, you are going to see these people in a hospital. Mm-hmm. You're going to see that, Sandra Oh, or, you're going to see all of these people in pretty much anywhere in America. But I would say my prototype or blueprint more so is Queen Latifah. I like what she does with her career, and she's closer to my background. She's from Newark, New Jersey. Right. Came up in hip hop. I'm from the Bronx. I came up in hip hop as a dancer. I wasn't a rapper. And then I have another prototype, and it's a guy, but it escapes me right now.
You ever made a vision board?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
You have a vision board?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
A vision board, for those who don't know, and I did it for the second time this year, is basically finding magazines or pictures online that inspire you and that remind you of what your goals are.
Right.
And the things that you want.
Right.
So mine, I have cutouts from Emmy Magazine because I want to be a host and I want to win an Emmy for hosting something.
Absolutely.
And I have 9 or 10 pictures of people that I look up to. And I said, you know what? All of those people, I'm sure most of them did not sleep in till 10:30, Lauren. Yeah. So get your ass out of bed. It's Tuesday, maybe on Sunday. But tell me about your vision board, if you don't mind sharing.
Yeah, I made one this year. I hadn't made one in probably 7 years or something, but I made one this year. And so the women that are on my board, it's Queen Latifah, Shonda Rhimes, Mara Brock Akil, Debbie Allen. Is there anyone else? I think that might be it for women. But also there's like a spiritual element. There's a fitness area, eating, changing my diet, eat more plant-based. I still like meat though, but probably more plant-based. And I feel like there's a segment over here that I'm forgetting. Home. I want to purchase a home. And,
interesting. And then how do you use your vision board?
Well, I have it on top of, I have these 2 big bulletin boards over my desk. So it's up there. So then I get to look at it and read it and like having moments of like feeling the emotion around if I was that, or just thinking like, I wonder what Queen Latifah went through, or how did she get here to Bessie? I remember when she did Chicago and it was like, what? She is on Chicago? I pretty much just look at it and just allow emotions to well up and see how it feels, and then maybe I'll start to vision something for the future for myself.
Yeah, it's one of those things I just started recently, but I do call on a board of people that I emulate, or the touchstones that I have.
Right. Yeah.
And now I want to get all of them on my podcast.
Well, that can happen.
You said rely on myself and I'll never be disappointed.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, I mentioned that my parents thought it'd be a good idea to move to Jersey in my sophomore year of high school. And then while I was a junior, they decided that they hated New Jersey and moved back to New York. Was I a junior? I may have been a senior at that point. Or I was just about to be a senior. And so I called up my best friend in New York and said, "Where'd you go for your senior trip?" And she's like, "Oh, we went to a dude ranch." And I was like, "Oh, I'm not coming back home. We were going on a cruise in New Jersey." That was the deciding factor. So my best friend in high school, her mother allowed me to stay with them for the senior year. And I guess there was like my father had said that he was going to pay her a certain amount of money. I don't know what the arrangement was, but he at the time was just not impeccable with his word. So he did not make those arrangements. And I guess it had been going on for a while. And so she pulled me aside and she said, "So listen, your father said that he was going to, make this, pay me, for your living here, or what have you, and for food. And he has not done that yet. So you have two options. You can move back to New York with your parents, or because she had two kids, or if you want to stay here, I know that you're working." My first job was KFC. She was like, "Maybe you'll give me I think it was like $40 every 2 weeks." She's like, "It just feels like there's a contribution being made or whatever."
Right.
And I said, "Okay." Well, I knew I wasn't going back to New York, so I said, "All right, well, I'll pay you whatever. I think it was $40 every 2 weeks." And then I guess she saw that I was about to cry, and she said, "There's no need for you to cry." She said, "Listen, adults mean well, and we say things." Well, she prefaced it as people. People will say things and they mean well, but a lot of times they don't really do what they say. So the best thing for you to do is to just rely on yourself so that you're not disappointed by other people. And I ran with that until I became so independent where I didn't ask anybody for help. And I'm like, "Oh, I got to make an adjustment to this."
Right.
It's like, no, you have to discern who you're dealing with and then decide whether or not you're going to take that person's word or what have you. That was something that I found out later on, probably in my 30s, I think. That was 17 when she told me that. So yeah, so it was like, oh, okay. So rely on myself, and then there's no disappointments. But then now that I've made an adjustment, it's, no, there's people that I can rely on. These are my people that I know that I can rely on, and these are the people that I know that I can't. So I can choose to either ask them for something or not. Or if I do, I don't have my expectations up so high so that if they have a pattern of falling through, then it's like, oh, okay, I kind of felt like you're going to do that.
Right.
So yeah.
It's interesting. When we start in the business, or when I started in entertainment business, or actually applies anywhere, you want to ask someone for a favor.
Yeah.
You're so afraid to ask, what are they going to say? Or they're too high up on the ladder.
Right.
How am I going to approach the email? It felt like days to craft an email. And it took a long time to feel like asking as a professional, that the worst they can say is no, and no is just as powerful, because no is clarity.
Exactly.
Whereas a maybe or I don't know can be anything.
I don't know what to do with that.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do with that.
Yeah. Yeah. I've gotten to the point where I just ask people. And it's that they'll either say no, and hopefully they won't shoot me and kill me. So no is not bad.
Right. It's interesting as an actor, if let's say you're an actor and you want to contact a casting director. Oh, there's a million ways to hide from doing that, or how am I going to do it? But if you're a producer of something like, let's say, a podcast, your mindset changes of, no, this podcast is what I do for a living. I can ask this casting director as, I don't want something from you, but I want to learn something. I want to learn something. I want you to share. And it's a different part of the brain, or different part of the...
Or just putting on a different hat and recognize... Well, I had this conversation, I think, with Dallas recently, or... anyway, she was talking about how she had lunch with a casting director, and the casting director loves what she does, but she said, the one thing that I don't like is that you tell actors to call us, and that's unprofessional. And she went on and on and on, and so Dallas saw it. She's like, okay. And so, they proceeded to have lunch. And then somewhere along the line, Dallas started asking her about how does she procure work. And she was like, well, if it's a director that I know, whatever, then I'll call. And then so she caught herself. And the distinction was the woman was saying she said that it was unprofessional. And so Dallas said, I work with professionals. So I teach people who are professional to make phone calls. They're not calling to, and that was that's when the woman's like, okay.
I called
my number.
Right. I called a casting director once for a animated show that I loved that I wanted to be on, and I saw that through a Google alert that she won an award, for a casting director's award.
Right.
And I called her office. I found her number on the internet. I called her office and to the front desk person just said, hey, I wanted to just leave a quick note for so-and-so. I don't know her. We've never met, but congratulations. I love the show, and thank you for being part of something that means something to me. She puts me through to the woman, and I'm like, yeah. Oh my God.
Big fan.
Big fan. But I repeated the same thing, and she was like, thank you. And I still look back at that and I'm like,
Give me your headshot.
yeah. I still don't know what to do with that. And I still have never met her. She still works for that show that I have always wanted to be on. And I just put faith in the universe that the day that we meet, she may or may not be like, did you call me once just to say thank you or congrats? And that was it. I'm like, yeah. On that note, Tiwana, thank you very much for being on the 5 Things That Changed Your Life.
This is fun. It went fast.
My thanks as always to my co-host and producer Alan Ng, and to this episode's guest, Tiwana Floyd. You can subscribe to her blog at actinglessonslearned.com. Follow Tiwana on Twitter at Tiwana Floyd. That's TIWANAFLOYD. And on Instagram at QuirkyFul. That's QUIRKYFUL. Thank you also to our sound engineer, Sammy Junio, of the Hello Lion Face Podcast Network. Music by My Monthly Date. Subscribe to 5 Things That Changed Your Life on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast service. And go ahead and leave us a nice review if you'd like. You can follow us online at 5thingspodcast.com or on Facebook at facebook.com/5thingspodcast, that's FIVE, or on Twitter at 5thingspod, that's FIVEPOD. For 5 Things That Changed Your Life, I'm Lauren Kling.